The stars stretched endlessly before the Wanderer as it cut through the darkness of space. Captain Minho stood on the bridge, watching the view screen with careful eyes. This was humanity's first real journey beyond their solar system. After decades of trying, humans had finally figured out how to travel faster than light. The weight of this moment pressed on his shoulders. Every decision he made would be remembered in history books. Una sat at her communication station, monitoring all frequencies for any sign of other life. For 3 weeks they had found nothing but empty space and distant stars. She was beginning to think they were alone in the universe. Then her screen lit up with signals, hundreds of them all at once. "Captain, I'm picking up something big," she said, her voice rising with excitement. "Really big. There are ships out there and they're heading straight for us." The view screen flickered and changed. What appeared before them made every person on the bridge freeze. A fleet of massive vessels hung in space like floating cities. They were unlike anything humans had ever built. Strange designs covered their hulls, glowing with colors that seemed wrong somehow. At the center of the fleet sat the largest ship, easily 10 times the size of the Wanderer. "They're hailing us," Una reported, her fingers dancing across her controls. "Put them through," Minho ordered. Straightening his uniform, the screen changed again. An alien face appeared, and that was when the trouble started. The creature on the screen looked like someone had taken a chicken, given it 6 eyes, dressed it in the most elaborate costume imaginable, and then made it very, very angry. Feathers sprouted from its head in a pattern that reminded everyone of an old-fashioned judge's wig. Its body was covered in what appeared to be ceremonial armor, but the armor had so many decorations and medals that it looked more like a fancy dinner plate. "Do-yun," the science officer made a small choking sound. He turned away quickly, his shoulders shaking. The alien spoke, and its words came through the translator in a deep, pompous voice. "I am Supreme Commander Thalvex of the Galactic Dominion. You have entered space that belongs to the Eternal Empire. You will identify yourselves immediately and prepare to submit to our authority." Minho opened his mouth to respond, but then he heard it. A giggle. It came from somewhere behind him. Then another. Within seconds, the entire bridge crew was struggling not to laugh. The alien's appearance, combined with its incredibly serious tone, created something the human mind found irresistible. "I apologize, Commander," Minho began, but his voice cracked. "We are humans from Earth, and we mean no—" Una had forgotten to mute the communications channel. The sound of barely controlled laughter filled the transmission. One crew member actually snorted. Thalvex's 6 eyes widened. All of them. At the same time. "What is the meaning of this disrespect?" he demanded. "Do you mock the Dominion?" Doyen tried to help. He really did. No, Commander, you have to understand. Humans have this thing called humor, and sometimes when we see something that looks like a very serious peacock wearing a judge's wig, He stopped, realizing what he had just said. The bridge went completely silent. Everyone stared at Doyen. Thalvex's feathers puffed up, making him look even more like the bird Doyen had mentioned.
"Peacock?"
"Peacock?" His voice rose with each word. "I am the Supreme Commander of 300 worlds. I have led the Dominion fleet for 40 cycles. I have conquered 17 rebellious systems. And you dare compare me to some primitive flying creature?" Minho stepped forward, trying desperately to salvage the situation. "Commander, please understand, we didn't mean to offend. This is our first contact with alien life. We're just surprised and excited, and humans sometimes express that in ways that might seem strange to others." But the damage was done. More Dominion officers appeared on the screen behind Thalvex, each one looking more elaborate and pompous than the last. One wore a hat that looked exactly like a fruit basket. Another had so many medals that they couldn't possibly be real. A third had tentacles arranged in perfect spirals that bobbed when it moved, creating an effect that was somehow both impressive and ridiculous. Someone on the bridge whispered "space peacocks," and several crew members had to leave the room, their faces red from holding in laughter. Thalvex was shaking with rage now. "This is an outrage, an insult to the dignity of the Dominion. You primitives clearly do not understand the gravity of your situation. The Dominion has ruled this sector of space for 10,000 of your years. Every species we have encountered has shown proper respect and submitted to our wisdom. But you laugh. We really are sorry," Minho tried again. "It's not personal. It's just how humans are. We find humor in unexpected situations. Humor. Thalvex repeated the word like it was poison. What is this humor? Una, who had finally managed to control herself, spoke up. It's when something surprises us in a certain way and we react with laughter. It's a positive emotion, really. It means we're happy. You are happy to meet the Dominion fleet? Thalvex seemed genuinely confused now. Well, yes, actually, Minho said. We've been hoping to find other intelligent life for centuries. This is an amazing moment for us. Thalvex stared at them with all 6 eyes. He seemed to be processing this information, trying to understand beings that reacted to potential threats with joy and laughter. Finally, he spoke again, his voice colder than before. The Dominion does not tolerate disrespect. You have insulted our honor and mocked our authority. This cannot stand. I am giving you 1 of your months to return to your homeworld and convince your leaders to submit properly to the Dominion. You will become a vassal species under our rule. You will follow our laws. You will show proper respect. If you refuse, you will face appropriate consequences. Consequences? Minho asked. What kind of consequences? The kind that make species extinct, Thalvex said simply. 1 month. Do not test our patience further. The transmission ended. The bridge crew stood in stunned silence, the humor of moments before completely gone. Did we just start a war by laughing at aliens? Una asked quietly. Minho sat down heavily in his captain's chair. I think we might have. Doyun set course for Earth, maximum speed. We need to warn everyone that we just insulted the most powerful force in the galaxy. As the Wanderer turned toward home, Minho couldn't help but think that humanity's first contact with alien life would go down in history, though probably not in the way anyone had hoped. They had dreamed of this moment for so long, imagined it in so many ways, but nobody had ever considered that humanity's greatest weakness might be their inability to keep a straight face when confronted with space chickens in fancy armor. The journey home would take 2 weeks. That gave them plenty of time to figure out how to explain to Earth that they had approximately 1 month to either submit to an alien empire or prepare for war, all because nobody could stop laughing. The United Nations Space Council chamber was packed with representatives from every nation on Earth. Ambassador Jiwan stood at the podium, trying to maintain her diplomatic composure as she explained the situation. Behind her, a video played showing the first contact with the Dominion. Every time Thalvex appeared on screen, uncomfortable laughter rippled through the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, please, Jiwan said firmly. I understand the Dominion's appearance is unusual to us, but we must take this threat seriously. They control hundreds of worlds and possess technology far beyond our own. We have 3 weeks left to respond to their ultimatum. Military Coordinator Hyunjin stepped forward, his expression grim. Our preliminary analysis suggests that even with all of Earth's defenses combined, we couldn't hold off a full Dominion assault for more than a few days. Their ships are massive, their weapons are powerful, and they have numbers we simply cannot match. So what do we do? Asked one of the council members. Do we surrender to these space birds? We negotiate, Jiwan said. The Dominion has agreed to send a delegation to Earth. They arrive tomorrow. We will show them that humanity can be respectful and serious when necessary. We will convince them that our initial reaction was simply cultural misunderstanding. The next day, Jiwan stood at the landing platform with a carefully selected diplomatic team. They had been briefed extensively. No laughing, no smiling, perfect seriousness. They could do this. The Dominion shuttle descended from the sky, its design somehow managing to be both elegant and absurd. It touched down with surprising grace and a ramp extended from its side. What emerged made maintaining composure nearly impossible. High Legate Vornath was even more decorated than Thalvex had been. His ceremonial robes seemed to defy physics, flowing in ways that shouldn't work. Behind him came a procession of lesser officials, each one trying to look more important than the last. They moved in perfect synchronization, their movements so choreographed that it looked like an elaborate dance. Greetings, primitive beings of Earth, Vornath announced. I am High Legate Vornath, third speaker of the Eternal Council, keeper of the sacred protocols, master of 47 ceremonies, and bearer of the... He continued for 5 full minutes listing titles and achievements. Jiwan kept her face perfectly neutral, though her jaw was starting to ache from the effort. When Vornath finally finished, she bowed slightly. Welcome to Earth, High Legate. We are honored by your presence. Yes, you should be, Vornath agreed seriously. Now we shall proceed to the Chamber of Submission, where you will formally accept Dominion authority over your world. Actually, Jiwan said carefully, we were hoping to discuss the terms of our relationship first. Perhaps we could— There are no terms to discuss, Vornath interrupted. The Dominion does not negotiate with lesser species. You will follow our protocols exactly as specified in the Codex of Proper Submission. He gestured to one of his attendants, who produced a massive book. The attendant needed both arms to carry it. Somin, the cultural liaison, stepped forward. High Legate, perhaps if you explained your customs to us, we could better understand what you expect. Vornath's eyes brightened. All 6 of them. An excellent suggestion. Understanding Dominion superiority is the first step to proper submission. Come, we shall begin your education. The delegation moved to a conference room where Vornath spent the next 3 hours explaining Dominion protocols. Every single rule seemed designed to be as complicated and pointless as possible. There were specific ways to bow, to speak, to walk, to sit. There were 18 different forms of address depending on the rank of the person being spoken to. There was even a protocol for how to properly express agreement, which involved a complex series of gestures that took Somin 15 minutes to learn. And now, Vornath said, we come to the ceremony of eternal subordination. This is the ritual through which your species will formally accept Dominion rule. He activated a holographic display. It showed a human figure wearing what could only be described as a hat, shaped like a fruit basket filled with actual fruit. The figure was bowing repeatedly while reciting words that appeared as text beneath the image. Jiwan read the translation and felt her careful composure begin to crack. The oath rhymed in the Dominion language, but in English it translated to something like, "We are but small potatoes in the great vegetable garden of the Dominion. We humbly offer our tomatoes to the wise turnips who rule all things." I'm sorry, Jiwan said slowly, but did this translation come through correctly? Of course, Vornath said proudly. It is a sacred oath passed down through 10,000 years of Dominion history. 37 species have sworn this oath before you. And they all wore the fruit basket hat? The hat of humble acknowledgement, yes. It symbolizes that you understand your place in the natural order. Someone excused herself from the room. Through the door, G1 could hear what sounded suspiciously like suppressed laughter. She cleared her throat. High Legate, I must be honest with you. This ceremony would be very difficult for humans to perform with the proper respect. In our culture, wearing fruit on one's head is associated with comedy. Comedy, Vornath repeated. There is that word again. What is this comedy? G1 tried to explain. It's when something is funny, when it makes us laugh. Humor is a very important part of human culture. But what purpose does it serve? Vornath seemed genuinely confused. Does it help you grow food? Build structures? Defend yourselves? Not directly, but it helps us deal with stress and difficult situations. It brings us joy. Vornath conferred with his attendants in their own language. They spoke in serious tones for several minutes before he turned back to G1. The Dominion has encountered many strange species, but we have never heard of this humor you describe. It sounds like a dysfunction of the mind. Perhaps a disease. We should study this further. It's not a disease, G1 protested. It's perfectly natural for humans. Natural or not, it is inappropriate. During the ceremony of eternal subordination, you will not engage in this humor. You will wear the hat of humble acknowledgement. You will recite the oath. You will perform the synchronized wobbling. The what? Vornath demonstrated. He and his entire delegation began to wobble back and forth in perfect unison. Their movements synchronized like a very strange dance. They took it completely seriously, their faces solemn as they wobbled. That was when someone's phone went off. A member of the human delegation had accidentally left their recording device on. The entire meeting had been live streaming to the internet. Within minutes, the video was everywhere. The Dominion's pompous arrival, the endless titles, the fruit basket hat, the vegetable oath, the synchronized wobbling. Humans around the world watched in amazement and did what humans do best. They made memes. Space Chickens Demand Fruit Hats became the top trending topic worldwide. Someone created an animation of Vornath wobbling to pop music. Another person made a compilation video of all the ridiculous Dominion protocols set to comedy sound effects. Within hours, billions of people had seen it. And billions of people were laughing. Vornath was informed of this development by one of his aides. His feathers puffed up in outrage. "This is an unforgivable insult," he declared. "You have not only refused to submit properly, but you have mocked our most sacred ceremonies. You have made entertainment from our customs. This is worse than we imagined." Jiwan tried to explain, tried to apologize, tried to make him understand that humans didn't mean real disrespect. But Vornath was beyond listening. "The Dominion gave you a chance for peaceful submission. You have thrown that chance away. Supreme Commander Thalvex will hear of this outrage. Your species has declared war through mockery. Prepare to face the consequences." The Dominion delegation left immediately, their shuttle launching back into space. Jiwan stood on the landing platform watching them go. Hyunjin came to stand beside her. "Well," he said quietly, "I suppose we're going to war." "Because we made memes about fruit hats and wobbling," Jiwan said, shaking her head. "This is the most ridiculous way to start a war in human history. Should we try to stop the memes? Take down the videos?" Jiwan thought about it for a moment, then sighed. "It wouldn't matter now. The damage is done. Besides, have you ever tried to stop the internet from making jokes about something? It's impossible." High above Earth, the Dominion delegation reported back to their fleet. Supreme Commander Thalvex listened to their report with growing fury. These humans were more dangerous than he thought. They didn't just laugh at the Dominion. They spread their laughter like a plague, turning sacred ceremonies into entertainment. "Prepare the war fleet," he ordered. "These humans must learn respect. And if they cannot learn, they will be eliminated." Admiral Tajin watched the tactical display with growing concern. 3 weeks had passed since the failed negotiations. Now the Dominion war fleet had arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system. 200 massive warships hung in space like harbingers of doom. Earth's entire defense force consisted of 43 ships, most of them converted civilian vessels with hastily installed weapons. "Sir, they're broadcasting something," the communications officer reported. "Put it through." Supreme Commander Thalvex appeared on the main screen. He looked even more decorated than before, wearing what appeared to be full ceremonial battle armor. It gleamed with so many jewels and metals that it probably cost more than Earth's entire space program. "Humans of Earth," he began, his voice filled with formal gravity. "You have chosen the path of resistance. This is regrettable but not unexpected from such primitive beings. According to Dominion Protocol 742, Section 16, Paragraph 9, I must now formally declare the commencement of hostilities. Let it be known that on this date, at this time, the Dominion fleet shall engage in righteous combat against the rebellious forces of the human species. May this battle serve as a lesson to," he continued for 45 minutes. The declaration of war had to be read in its entirety, including footnotes and historical precedents. By the time he finished, every ship in Earth's fleet had powered up weapons, moved into defensive positions, and some pilots had eaten lunch. "Is he serious?" asked Pilot Junho from his fighter cockpit. "They actually announce everything they're going to do before they do it?" "Apparently," Tajin replied. "All ships prepare for engagement. Wait for my signal." Thalvex finally finished his declaration. "And now, according to proper military protocol, we shall advance in formation Delta 7, approaching at .3 light speed, with our heavy cruisers leading the assault. Prepare to face Dominion justice." Tajin blinked. Did he just tell us his entire battle plan? "Yes, sir," the tactical officer confirmed. "Formation Delta 7 is in our database from the information the Wanderer gathered. It's a standard frontal assault with heavy ships forward, light ships protecting the flanks, and command vessels in the rear. They're following a textbook formation from a 10,000-year-old manual. Apparently, sir." The Dominion fleet began to move, advancing exactly as Thalvex had described. They moved in perfect formation, every ship maintaining precise distances from its neighbors. It was impressive in its own way, but also completely predictable. "This is too easy," Taejun muttered. "There has to be a trick," but there was no trick. The Dominion fleet came forward in their textbook formation, broadcasting their intentions every step of the way. When they entered weapons range, Thalvex announced, "We shall now fire our forward plasma cannons in a concentrated barrage pattern, targeting your largest vessels. Evasive maneuvers." Taejin ordered, Earth's ships scattered like startled fish. The plasma barrage fired exactly where the ships had been moments before, missing completely. The Dominion seemed genuinely surprised that their targets had moved. "They actually announced what they were going to shoot and where," someone said over the general channel. Are they trying to lose? Yunyo saw his opportunity. His fighter was small and fast, not bound by the organized chaos of the main fleet. He dove toward the Dominion formation, weaving between their ships in patterns that seemed random, but were actually carefully calculated to confuse targeting systems. "Attention, unidentified fighter," a Dominion voice called over the radio. "You are engaging in improper combat behavior. Return to your designated position immediately. Make me, Space Peacock," Yunyo shouted back, executing a barrel roll between two Dominion cruisers. The silence that followed was profound. Nobody had ever spoken to the Dominion like that during combat. Did you just insult us while performing unnecessary aerobatic maneuvers?" the Dominion officer asked, sounding genuinely confused. "Yeah, and I'm about to do it again." Yunyo launched a missile, then immediately pulled up and over, using the Dominion ship's own bulk to shield him from return fire. The Dominion fleet didn't know how to respond. Their combat protocols had no provision for enemies who treated warfare like an extreme sport. Their targeting computers kept losing lock because Junho's movements made no tactical sense. He should be conserving energy and maintaining optimal firing positions, but instead he was doing loop-de-loops and flying upside down. Meanwhile, Engineer Heian had been studying the Dominion ships from the safety of Earth's orbital station. She noticed something interesting about their shields. "Admiral, I think I found a weakness," she reported. "Their shields are incredibly strong from the front and sides, but there's almost nothing protecting their undersides. Why would they leave such an obvious vulnerability?" Taijin asked. "I checked their technical manual. It says, and I quote, 'No honorable opponent would attack from below, as such tactics are beneath the dignity of proper warfare.'" Taijin stared at the report. "They left their entire fleet vulnerable because attacking from below isn't polite?" "Apparently, sir. All ships' new attack pattern. Come in from below their formation. The Earth fleet dove under the Dominion line. The enemy ships tried to rotate to face them, but their formation was so rigid that any major movement would break their careful positioning. They couldn't maintain their textbook formation and defend their vulnerable undersides at the same time. This is highly irregular," Talvex protested over the open channel. "You are not following proper combat protocols. How are we supposed to fight if you refuse to follow the rules?" "Rules?" Taijin replied. "You didn't send us a copy of the rules. They are universal rules understood by all civilized species. Well, apparently humans didn't get the memo." The battle became chaos. Earth's forces attacked from unexpected angles, using tactics that made no sense according to Dominion doctrine. Yunyo continued his one-man show, taunting enemy pilots and performing moves that violated several laws of physics and common sense. Other human pilots began copying his style, turning the space battle into something that looked more like a competitive air show than proper warfare. The Dominion fleet, despite having superior numbers and technology, found itself completely overwhelmed. Their ships were powerful but inflexible. They could only execute the maneuvers in their ancient combat manual. When faced with opponents who ignored all conventional tactics, they simply didn't know what to do. One Dominion captain tried to improvise, breaking formation to pursue a human fighter. Immediately, 3 other Dominion ships called him out for violating protocol. He stopped his pursuit and returned to his designated position, allowing the human fighter to escape. "They're arguing with each other about proper procedure," the communications officer reported. "Half their fleet is telling the other half they're doing it wrong." After 2 hours of combat, not a single Earth ship had been destroyed. Several were damaged, but all were still functional. The Dominion fleet, on the other hand, had lost 15 ships and another 30 had sustained heavy damage. They hadn't lost to superior technology or numbers. They'd lost to confusion. Dalvex made a decision he had never made before in his entire military career. "All ships retreat. Return to Rally Point Omega." The Dominion fleet withdrew, maintaining their perfect formation even in retreat. Dalvex stared at his tactical display, trying to understand what had happened. The Dominion had never lost a battle. Never. In 10,000 years of warfare, they had defeated every enemy they faced. Until now. "What are these humans?" he asked aloud. "They ignore all proper tactics. They perform random maneuvers. They taunt us during combat. They attack from dishonorable angles. How is any civilized species supposed to fight such chaos?" His tactical officer ventured carefully. "Perhaps, Commander, that is exactly their strategy. They are unpredictable because they do not follow our rules. They win because we cannot anticipate actions that make no logical sense. Thalvex's feathers ruffled in agitation. Then how do we defeat them? I do not know, Commander. Back on Earth, the defense fleet returned to cheers and celebration. They had won an impossible victory against overwhelming odds. But Tyjan knew better than to celebrate too much. The Dominion would return, and next time they might actually try something different. We bought ourselves some time, he told his officers. But this war is far from over. We need to figure out what makes the Dominion tick. We need to understand why they're so rigid, so predictable, and we need to find a way to end this conflict before they decide to just blow up our entire planet from orbit. In his fighter, Junho was being congratulated by his squadron. Did you see that one Dominion pilot try to file a formal complaint about my barrel rolls during combat? He laughed. He actually stopped shooting at me to call me dishonorable. But even as they laughed, everyone knew the truth. They had won one battle through luck and Dominion incompetence. The next battle might be very different. 6 months had passed since the first battle. An uneasy ceasefire held while both sides regrouped and tried to understand what had happened. On Earth, xenoanthropologist Bora led a research team studying everything they could learn about the Dominion. They had captured technical manuals, cultural databases, and even a few prisoners from damaged ships who had chosen surrender over death. Bora sat in her lab surrounded by holographic displays, each showing different aspects of Dominion society. The more she learned, the more fascinated she became. The Dominion wasn't just rigid in their military tactics. They were rigid in everything. Look at this, she said to her assistant, pulling up a Dominion children's story. This is what they tell their young ones. It's about a student who follows all the rules perfectly and becomes successful. The moral of the story is literally never question authority and always do exactly what you're told. That's their version of entertainment? Her assistant asked. They don't have entertainment as we understand it. They have instructional narratives, educational protocols, morality demonstrations, but nothing just for fun, nothing that makes them laugh or feel joy without purpose. She pulled up another file. Their entire civilization is built on hierarchy and predictability. Every species they've conquered shared this trait. They were all serious, straightforward species who valued order and tradition. The Dominion absorbed them easily because they all thought the same way. But we don't, her assistant said. No, we don't. Humans are chaotic by nature. We question everything. We find humor in serious situations. We break rules just to see what happens. We hold contradictory ideas in our heads at the same time. To the Dominion, we must seem completely insane. One of the Dominion prisoners, a young officer named Krelvin, had become particularly cooperative. Unlike the older members of his species, he seemed curious about humans rather than just confused by them. Bora had been working with him for weeks, trying to build understanding between their species. Krelvin, she asked during one session, have you ever laughed? The Dominion officer tilted his head. A gesture she had learned meant he was thinking carefully. I do not know this word. What is laughed? Bora showed him a video of a human comedy show. The comedian told jokes, the audience laughed, everyone seemed happy. Krelvin watched with all 6 eyes fixed on the screen. I do not understand, he said when it finished. The speaker says things that are not true. The audience makes strange noises. What is the purpose? The purpose is joy, Bora explained. The comedian says things that are surprising or point out absurdities in life. When we recognize these absurdities, we laugh. It makes us feel good. But nothing was accomplished. No information was transferred. No problems were solved. Not everything needs to accomplish something tangible. Sometimes joy itself is the accomplishment. Krelvin stared at her, his alien features unreadable. But something in his posture suggested he was beginning to grasp something new. Something his species had never experienced. Meanwhile, on the Dominion capital world, a similar process was occurring. Junior analyst Krelvin's counterpart, a young Dominion scholar named Prenthi, had been assigned to study human psychology. The High Council wanted to understand these bizarre creatures so they could defeat them. But the more Prenthi studied humanity, the more she began to question her own society. She watched thousands of hours of human media, art, music, movies, comedy shows, dramatic performances. At first it all seemed like noise and chaos, but slowly patterns emerged. Not the rigid patterns of Dominion thought, but something more fluid and complex. She began to see how humans used humor to cope with tragedy. How they created art to express feelings that couldn't be put into words. How they told stories not to instruct but to explore possibilities. How they could disagree violently on one topic while remaining friends on another. Prenthi wrote a report to the High Council, but she knew they would dismiss it. Still, she had to try. The humans possess a cognitive ability we lack, her report stated. They can hold multiple contradictory viewpoints simultaneously and find value in all of them. They can see a situation from many angles at once. They question their own beliefs constantly. This makes them unpredictable, but it also makes them adaptable in ways we cannot match. As expected, the High Council rejected her findings. These humans are simply chaotic and undisciplined, they responded. Their lack of proper structure is a weakness, not a strength. But Prenthi wasn't the only young Dominion citizen thinking these thoughts. A whole generation was beginning to question why everything had to be so serious all the time. Back on Earth, diplomat Jiho proposed a radical idea to the Space Council. We need a cultural exchange program. Send our people to their worlds, bring their people to ours. Not as enemies, but as students learning from each other. They want to exterminate us, someone objected. Why would they agree to an exchange program? Because they're as confused by us as we are fascinated by them. Some of them at least want to understand. Krelvin has been incredibly cooperative. His reports back to the Dominion suggest there are others like him who question their rigid society. It took weeks of careful negotiation, but eventually, a limited exchange was arranged. Bora would lead a delegation to the Dominion capital. In return, Krelvin and a few other young Dominion citizens would visit Earth. The human delegation's arrival on the Dominion homeworld was everything Bora expected and more. The entire planet seemed to be built on straight lines and perfect angles. Every building looked the same. Every street followed a grid pattern. Citizens moved in orderly fashion, always following the designated paths, never deviating from expected behavior. It's like being inside a computer program, one of her team members whispered. They were taken to the Grand Hall of Learning, where they would demonstrate human culture to assembled Dominion scholars. Bora had prepared carefully for this moment. She brought examples of human art, music, and yes, comedy. The Dominion audience watched in silence as humans performed a play, Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. The story of confused lovers, magical fairies, and a man with a donkey's head was about as far from Dominion sensibilities as possible. When it ended, the Dominion scholars sat in stunned silence. I do not understand the purpose of this display, one of them finally said. The events depicted did not happen. The information presented has no practical application. Why create such a thing? Because it's beautiful, Bora replied. Because it makes us think about love and identity and transformation. Because it gives us joy to watch and perform. Joy without purpose is inefficient. Joy is the purpose, Bora insisted. Not everything needs to serve a practical function. Beauty, art, laughter. These things make life worth living. The older Dominion scholars dismissed this entirely, but Bora noticed some of the younger ones leaning forward, their eyes bright with curiosity. They were beginning to understand. The breakthrough came 3 weeks into the exchange when Krelvin, back on Earth, experienced his first genuine laugh. He was watching a human child's birthday party, trying to understand the strange customs. When a clown slipped on a banana peel, something unexpected happened. Krelvin made a sound he had never made before. A short, sharp vocalization that came from deep in his body. It felt strange and wonderful at the same time. The humans around him froze, staring. Did you just laugh? Someone asked. I think I did, Krelvin said, amazed. The clown fell in a way that was unexpected. I knew he would survive. I knew it was performed for entertainment. And somehow the surprise of it combined with the safety of knowing it was not real danger created a sensation that made me produce that sound. That's exactly what laughter is, Bora said, smiling. She had returned from the Dominion homeworld just days before. You just experienced humor for the first time. Krelvin sat down, overwhelmed. My entire species has existed for thousands of generations, and we never knew this feeling existed. How much else are we missing? But not everyone in the Dominion was ready for such questions. Conservative elements, led by the fanatical Archon Morketh, saw the growing interest in human culture as a disease. When young Dominion citizens began trying to create their own jokes, when they started questioning why everything had to follow protocols, the conservatives panicked. Morketh staged a coup. imprisoning the moderate leaders who had supported the cultural exchange. He took control of the Dominion military and made a terrifying announcement. The human infection must be purged before it spreads further. We will not simply defeat them in battle, we will exterminate their entire species. No more negotiations, no more exchanges, only complete eradication. Earth received this message with growing dread. Admiral Tajan reviewed the intelligence reports. The Dominion was assembling their largest fleet ever, pulling ships from every corner of their empire. This time they weren't coming to conquer. They were coming to destroy. Bora stood on Earth, watching the stars and thinking about Krelvin and Prenthi and all the young Dominion citizens who had begun to understand humor. They were proof that change was possible, that the Dominion could learn and grow. But would there be time for that growth before Morketh's armada arrived to end humanity forever? 3 weeks, that was all the time Earth had before the Dominion's extermination fleet arrived. Admiral Tajan knew that every defense humanity could muster wouldn't be enough. The enemy was bringing over 1,000 warships, and this time they had orders to simply destroy Earth from orbit. No negotiations, no chances for surrender, just complete annihilation. But Captain Minho had a different plan, one so crazy that it might actually work. We can't win by fighting, he explained to the War Council. We've proven that. But we've also proven something else. We can change them. Krelvin laughed. Prenthi questioned her society. Young Dominion citizens are starting to wonder if their rigid way of life is the only way. That's wonderful, Tajan said. But it won't stop 1,000 warships from blowing us up in 3 weeks. No, but this might. Minho pulled up a data plan. We're going to broadcast humanity's greatest weapon directly into the heart of the Dominion Empire. And what weapon is that? Everything that makes us human. Comedy shows, funny videos, memes, music, art, stories. We're going to flood their networks with joy and see what happens. The plan was ambitious and probably insane. The Wanderer, upgraded with hybrid human-Dominion technology, would sneak into Dominion space. Krelvin, who had chosen to help humanity despite his species' orders, would use his access codes to get them past the outer defenses. Then they would upload a massive data package directly into the Dominion's central communication network. It's suicide, Tajan said flatly. Probably, Minho agreed. But it's better than sitting here waiting to die. The Wanderer launched with a volunteer crew. Minho commanded with Krelvin as their guide. They also brought Yuna and Doyen from the original First Contact mission. It seemed fitting that the crew who had started this by laughing at aliens would be the ones to finish it. The journey to Dominion space took 10 days. Every moment they expected to be detected and destroyed. But Krelvin's codes worked perfectly. The rigid Dominion security systems checked their credentials, found them valid, and let them pass. No one questioned why a ship would be traveling toward the capital during a full military mobilization. The computers simply verified that all protocols were being followed and allowed passage. Sometimes, Krelvin observed, following rules too strictly makes you vulnerable to anyone who knows the rules. They reached the communication hub on a minor Dominion colony world. It was a massive facility that helped relay messages across the entire empire. Krelvin had identified it as the perfect injection point for their broadcast. Once we upload the package, it will spread through their entire network within hours, he explained. Every Dominion citizen with access to communications will receive it. And then what? Doyen asked. Then we find out if the capacity for joy is stronger than the desire for order. The upload took 30 minutes. 30 agonizing minutes during which any Dominion officer could have discovered them and raised the alarm. But the facility was mostly automated, and the few personnel present were too busy with military preparations to notice a properly credentialed ship at a routine communication station. When the upload completed, Minho took a deep breath. That's it. We've just sent humanity's entire cultural database to every corner of the Dominion Empire. We should leave now, Krelvin advised. Very quickly, the Wanderer broke orbit and fled back toward human space. Behind them, across hundreds of Dominion worlds, something unprecedented began to happen. Billions of Dominion citizens received the transmission. At first, most deleted it immediately, assuming it was some kind of error or attack. But some watched it, young citizens mostly. Curious about the humans everyone was preparing to fight. They saw comedy shows where humans made jokes about their own failures. They saw art that existed purely to be beautiful. They heard music that made them feel emotions they didn't have names for. They watched movies about heroes who broke rules to do the right thing, about underdogs who won against all odds, about people finding joy in the midst of hardship. On one colony world, a young Dominion engineer named Veltas watched a video of a human comedian talking about the absurdity of modern life. When the comedian pointed out how everyone follows rules without questioning whether the rules make sense, something clicked in Veltas's mind. He had been thinking the same thing for years but had never dared say it out loud. He shared the video with his coworkers. Some dismissed it, but others watched. They began talking about it quietly at first, then more openly. They started questioning why their society worked the way it did. The same thing happened on dozens of worlds. Hundreds of worlds. Young Dominion citizens began creating their own attempts at humor. They were terrible at first, but they improved. They started asking questions. Why did everything have to be so formal? Why couldn't they try new things? Why was their entire species preparing to commit genocide against beings who had done nothing except be different? Prenthi, the scholar who had studied humanity, seized the moment. She wrote a manifesto and distributed it through underground networks. The humans are not a disease, she wrote. They are teachers. They show us that life can be more than protocols and hierarchies. They show us that questioning authority is not rebellion but wisdom. They show us that joy itself is worth fighting for. On the Dominion homeworld, protests erupted. Young citizens gathered in public squares, doing something that had never been done before in their entire history. They laughed. They told jokes. They performed skits that gently mocked the rigid formality of their society. The older generation was horrified, but the youth movement grew rapidly. Archon Morketh responded with fury. He ordered the protests suppressed and the ringleaders arrested. But his orders were questioned for the first time in Dominion history. Some military officers refused to arrest their own people for the crime of laughter. The rigid system that had held the Dominion together for 10,000 years was beginning to crack. Meanwhile, the extermination fleet approached Earth. Aboard the flagship, Morketh prepared for humanity's destruction. But his fleet was not as unified as he believed. Many of the younger officers had seen the broadcasts. Some had even laughed at them, though they hid this from their superiors. Captain Yuntel of the cruiser Eternal Victory sat in his command chair, thinking about what he had seen. A video of human children playing, laughing, inventing games just for the joy of it. He had never seen anything like it. Dominion children were taught, trained, prepared for their roles. They didn't play. They learned. What if his entire species had been missing something essential? When Morketh gave the order to advance into firing position around Earth, Yuntel made a decision that would change everything. Respectfully, Archon, I cannot obey that order. The fleet communications channel erupted in chaos. Morketh's voice thundered with rage. What did you say? I said I cannot obey. I will not participate in genocide. The humans have done nothing that warrants extermination. They simply exist differently than we do. That is not a crime. You dare refuse a direct order? You will be executed for treason. Then execute me, but I will not fire on Earth. For a moment, silence fell across the fleet. Then another captain spoke up. I also refuse. And I, said another. Within minutes, half the fleet had joined the mutiny. Younger officers, inspired by what they had seen in the human broadcasts, refused to commit mass murder. The fleet split, with loyalists preparing to fire on both the mutineers and Earth. Civil war was about to erupt in the heart of the Dominion fleet when a new transmission came through. Supreme Commander Thalvex appeared on all channels. He looked different somehow, less rigid than before. All ships stand down. By order of the restored High Council, Archon Morketh is relieved of command and placed under arrest for attempting an illegal coup. All hostilities against Earth are to cease immediately. Morketh's voice came through, shaking with fury. This is treason. The High Council was overthrown. And now it is restored, Thalvex replied. The moderate leadership escaped imprisonment and retook the government with support from the military and the people. Your reign of fear is over, Morketh. It is time for the Dominion to learn from our mistakes. Security forces boarded Morketh's ship and took him into custody. The crisis was over. Earth had been saved, not by weapons or tactics, but by the spread of an idea. The idea that life could be more than rigid obedience. That joy had value. That laughter was not a disease, but a gift. Thalvex contacted Earth directly. Ambassador G1 took the call, half expecting another ultimatum. Instead, she got something she never anticipated. Ambassador G1, Thalvek said, and there was something almost humble in his tone. It appears the Dominion has been wrong about many things. About your species, most of all. We came to this relationship assuming that our way was the only way, that our order was the only order. You have shown us otherwise. Does this mean you're withdrawing your demands for our submission? Jiwon asked carefully. It means we propose something different. An alliance of equals. Your species has much to teach us. Perhaps we have things to teach you as well, though I suspect you have learned most of our lessons already. You learned to question authority long before we did. The treaty was signed on a neutral station between Earth and Dominion space. Representatives from both species gathered in a chamber designed to accommodate